In order to reclaim your mind, you need to know what has your mind. Hey guys, so we are on the topic of decluttering our lives and making room for what matters most. If you missed my previous video where I talked about 5 signs you need to declutter your life, definitely check it out, especially if you've been feeling overwhelmed, unfulfilled, or have just been losing sight of who you are. So I realized that I am not going to be able to complete this series in 2 videos. There's just so much to get through. So I decided to turn this into a full-blown series. We're going to talk about how we can declutter our lives personally, professionally, spiritually, emotionally, and mentally. And in this video, we're going to start off talking about our mental space. So how we can reclaim our mind and water it well. If you haven't already subscribed, now is your time, because we, my friends, are going places on this channel. We are growing and thriving together, and I'm just really excited to see all that we do. Okay, so let's get started. In one of my poems, I wrote, "Pay attention to the things of the world you pay attention to, because without you even knowing, they are the very things molding you." And I think that sometimes we don't actually realize that everything that we are consuming in some way, shape, or form is molding us, it's shaping us, whether it be shaping the way that we perceive a certain situation. Like, for example, if you're watching the news, like a particular channel, and you're always consuming their headlines, that's going to shape the way that you view a certain situation, right? So it's like whatever we are consuming on a daily basis, whether it be through the conversations that we're having, what we're watching on TV, the music we're listening to, what we're reading, whatever it may be, in some way, shape, or form, those things are molding us. So when we're in like a cluttered state where we're feeling overwhelmed and we really don't know how to release everything, what we can end up doing is just continuing to consume things that aren't good for us because it's familiar. So I have a journaling question for us. And the first thing is, what are you paying attention to? Like, what has your attention? Think about your day from the beginning, from the moment you wake up. What's the first thing that has your attention? All the way through to when you go to bed. Think about those touch points. Like in marketing, we talk about touch points in like how we are reaching our consumer. So think about your day in touch points. What are the various points of your day that people or different outlets have access to you? And then ask yourself, are these interactions, whether they be online or in person, are they drawing me closer to who I'm created to be, or are they pulling me further away, or are they keeping me stagnant in a paralyzed state where I constantly just don't know what to do? So one way you can intentionally keep your mind focused on what matters most to you, and also just start your day in a way that you know who you are and you know what you're supposed to be doing, is starting your day with mind renewing exercises. One exercise that has been helpful for me is writing down 10 things that I want myself to know every single day. They can be quotes, scriptures, they might simply be words or just declarations that you want to remind yourself of every morning, so that when you go out into the world, whether it be going to work or running your errands, you are entering your day with this deep knowing of who you are, so that whatever may happen along the way, you're just a little bit more intentional about what you accept and also the way that you show up. I know for myself that there have been many times I've kind of like shied away from being confident or speaking up for myself, or just really standing in that like knowing, like, Shandice, like, you know who you are, like, you don't have to shy away. Just carrying that deep joy and courage and confidence in who I am. Whenever I take the time to just speak words of life over myself, it's like I just show up differently, you know? One thing that always fascinated me about the Bible, especially Genesis, is that the first thing that God spoke was, "Let there be light." Out of anything, he spoke light into the darkness. And when you think about dark space, when you speak light into the darkness, you are creating an atmosphere where you cannot deny the light being there. So think about yourself waking up every morning, and let's be honest, it's like the world we live in, there's so much happening around us, there's so much negativity. It can sometimes feel like dark space. And in that moment, we have a responsibility over our lives to speak light into the atmosphere of our lives so that when we are walking through our day, we have created a standard for how we are operating. Even though there are so many elements and things around us that we can't control, that's one of the things that we can control, speaking light into our day, speaking light into the darkness. So I know like creating a morning routine can definitely be a challenge sometimes, especially if you have a busy morning, right? So depending on how your life is set up, whether you have a family, whether you have an early morning routine where it's like, okay, that you need to be out the house by 5 a.m., 6 a.m. Sometimes the thought of doing all these things in the morning is just like, how on earth am I going to do this? But that's when we get creative, because maybe you might not feel as if you have the time to declare 10 things over your life every morning, but then you could literally get your phone, record yourself saying those 10 things, and on your drive to work, play it. You can hear yourself saying those 10 things over yourself and just speak them back. Like sometimes we literally just have to make the most out of what we have, because I do understand that our lives call for different things and no two people are living the exact same life. But the one thing I know is that everyone is facing some type of battle. And unless we are equipped, unless we have our armor on, unless we know how to make sure that we're protecting our mind and reclaiming our mind, then we are going to fall victim to the attacks around us. So now we're going to talk about releasing the clutter. So thinking about our minds and how sometimes it can just feel like there's just so much going on. And when we're in that place that we know we need to declutter our minds, you might be wondering, like, where do I start? Like, what do I do to actually release and not get into the cycle of just taking in more things to the point that I am going to explode? One thing that has helped me is, well, for one, I'm a writer. So I love to write, and I've had to like find ways to separate my writing for like me in my profession and also just writing out of just me loving to write, and also writing without feeling as if I have to edit my thoughts. So I have a journal that is just where I just write. I just write down how I'm feeling. I'm not trying to control what's coming out. I'm just sharing my thoughts, right? And that gives me the opportunity to really release what's in my mind. One of my favorite books is The Artist's Way. And she talks about doing morning pages where you're basically getting everything out of your mind so that you can start your day with a fresh look at the world and also a fresh look at your life. So I love the fact that even if you don't do morning pages, writing can also be a form of release any point of the day. Maybe on your lunchtime, you might want to just write for 15 minutes to just get whatever is bothering you out of your mind. Or maybe before you go to bed, you might want to just release the clutter from your mind so that you can go to bed and wake up feeling refreshed. So that's one thing that I love to do. Or sometimes I will record voice notes and treat it like a voice diary where I'm just sharing what's on my mind. Literally, I have voice notes from 2016, 2017, and sometimes I listen to them and even my voice sounds different. Like, it's so insane how we grow, and that process of just becoming more confident in who you are. It's also an opportunity to just like appreciate how far you've come and appreciate your journey. But then there are other things like just exercising or going for a walk, or even cooking can be a form of release. But just doing something that's going to bring you joy and allow you to really unwind your mind and actually locate the different things that might be bothering you. Because what can sometimes happen is we get into a habit of just stacking everything up and leaving it to fester. And after a while, how can we actually think clearly if everything in our mind is just clutter? Whenever you are feeling really overwhelmed, as if your mind just has a lot going on, that's when our mind is in a very fragile state. And when you are in a very fragile state, you can't just be taking anything in. Always pay attention to who has your ear. It's okay to be selective and purposeful over who has access to your mind, because at the end of the day, you're the one that has to deal with the consequences of the seeds that are planted in your mind. And this is why I love to take my little social media breaks. Like when I say I'm the queen of social media breaks. And this is why I actually love YouTube, because the thing I like about the setup of YouTube is that I get to choose what video I click on and who I listen to, versus Instagram and TikTok. You're literally scrolling and you don't really get a choice in what you consume sometimes, because you can't control what people are posting. And I think it gets to a point that we're just scrolling and everything's coming in, and we get so used to just accepting it, even though we get to curate our feeds and the people who we follow. Let's be real, we don't always want to know what everyone is doing. Like, sometimes having access to everyone's lives can really distract us from our own and distract us from being present in what's going on in our lives. It can almost be just a numbing agent. So even though social media as a whole isn't necessarily bad, what can be bad for us is when we are constantly consuming everyone else's lives, constantly taking in what everyone else is doing, to the point that we have no space to pay attention to what we need. And it becomes second nature. So if it means you need to delete the apps from your phone for like a few weeks, if it means that it's going to give you an opportunity to spend some time away focusing on your own life, then do it, because social media is going to always be there. And I think sometimes we can think that we're missing out, but what's more detrimental than missing out on your own life? Like, I'd rather miss out on what everyone else is doing than to miss out on my own life and what I need to do for myself. One thing I've noticed just about life in general, especially like the older that I get, is that in some way, shape or form, life is gonna have hard moments, trials, storms. You can be going through the best season of your life, but there might still be one thing that is a struggle. There might still be one thing that you're having to deal with at the cost of you living your best life, right? And what I found is that there are seasons where we are feeling as if we're in like system overload. There's just so much happening. We're overstimulated and we really don't know what way to turn. And in those moments, we have to be so intentional about filtering through what we are allowing in us. So, funny story, I was vacuuming a few days ago and I was using my Dyson, and then it just turned off. And there's this little area at the top where it like gives you instructions for if you need to empty out your filter or if you need to clean the vacuum. And it was giving me very clear instructions to remove the filter, wash it out, and leave it to dry for 24 hours. And in that moment, I was like, even my Dyson vacuum has boundaries, to the point that it doesn't care that I want to vacuum. Literally, I couldn't bypass its process of renewal to operate at its best. It has a clear way of operating so that it can pick up all the dirt and do what it has to do. That filter needs to be clean. And the same thing goes for us. What are our non-negotiables for operating at our best? What are our non-negotiables so that we can live with a decluttered mind where we're not always just taking in and accepting everything? When do we get to the point that we're like, I need to clean this filter. I need to clean out this mind of mine, reset so that I can truly show up in the way that I'm supposed to be and really become who I'm called to be in every season. When I think about the topic of reclaiming your mind, in order to reclaim your mind, you need to know what has your mind. And until we really pay attention to all the things that we have really allowed to take space in us, it's going to be really hard to remove them. It's going to be really hard to release them from our space. In the process of us reclaiming our minds daily, renewing our minds daily, the next step is really paying attention to what you are feeding your mind. One practical way that we can do this is get a piece of paper, write down all the ways that you want to intentionally feed your mind daily and water it well. Think about the music you listen to, the podcasts you listen to, the books, who are you interacting with, what conversations are you having? So for me, one thing I'm so grateful for is that I have such edifying conversations with my friends. Like, every time I end a conversation with my friends, I feel better. And that is such a blessing because I know that everyone doesn't have that experience. But one thing that you can do is really ask yourself, Do I need certain people to be speaking into my life? Do I need to be intentional about limiting certain interactions with people because of how I am made to feel at the end of those conversations? If at the end of certain conversations, it is like you have taken 10 steps back, that's a sign that you really don't need to be interacting too deeply with certain individuals. And one thing I've also learned is it's okay to love people from a distance, and it's okay to have boundaries with who and what you are allowing in your space. So I really hope that this video was a good foundation to just get you thinking about the ways that you might need to declutter your mind, audit your mental space, and really think about how you're going to filter through what you should be allowing in, what you will be rejecting, and how you're going to speak light into your mental space so that you can continue to create the life that you were created for. I think for the next video, we might go onto emotions, because you know our emotions have us messed up. So that might be the next part. Yeah, so I hope that you enjoyed this time with me. For those of you who are new to my channel, I'm Shandice, and to my subscribers, it's always a pleasure to have you here. So I'll see you guys in my next one. Take care.